Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for logging on today to our webinar, the Colorado EnergySmart Transportation Initiative, 1 year later. I'm Robbie Weber from State Smart Transportation Initiative, and I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items before I turn it over to the other panelists. All of our attendees are on mute right now. That means we won't be able to hear you, but you'll be able to hear us. We will be taking questions at the end of the presentation, but you can submit questions at any time during the webinar. You can just type them into the chat box, and then we'll be reading off the questions at the end. If for some reason you don't see the question box, there should be a little panel on the right side of your screen. You may need to look for a little orange arrow at the top right of your screen, and the chat box will come up, and you can just type in your questions there. And for those not familiar with SSTI, I just want to give a little overview of who we are. You can find out more information about our work on our website, which is SSTI.us. We are a network of reform-minded state DOTs. We are based at the University of Wisconsin, and we work with state DOTs in 3 different ways. We work as a community of practice, where participating agencies can learn together and share experiences as they implement innovative smart transportation policies. We also are a source of direct technical assistance to agencies on transformative and replicable smart transportation reform efforts, which is one of the things you're going to hear about today, our work with Colorado. And as a resource to the wider transportation community, including state, local, federal agencies, and in their efforts to reorient practice to changing social and financial demands. And we do this through our website, our webinars, our newsletter that comes out every couple weeks, and resources on our website. And I invite everyone to explore some of the things we have on our website, including the Colorado report that came out about a year ago. This recording is being recorded, so if for some reason you have to log off, or if you know somebody who would like to listen to it later, we will have the slides up on the site, and we'll also have a recording of the full webinar up on the site as well. So that'll probably happen tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and in just a moment turn it over to Sonia Hamel. She will be hosting today, and she is with Hamel Environmental Consulting. We also have Michelle Scheuerman from Colorado DOT. She's the statewide planning manager, and Jeff Sudmeier, who is the MPO and regional planning section manager. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Sonia, and she can take it from here. Sonia, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Robbie. Thank you all for coming today. I'm very pleased to be hosting this and to give you all an idea of some of the great work that happened in Colorado in the last 2 years. It's been a year since the project was completed, and this is a chance for us to go back and look at how it worked, and to continue to share some of the good work that happened in Colorado and some of the follow-up to hear what they learned. I'm going to spend a few minutes on what the issues are that they looked at, and give you some framework beyond Colorado around the issue of including thinking about energy and thinking about greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector. I was asked to try and link some of these things and provide a context. So just to say that this is the basic issue here, is that for every gallon of gasoline that we burn in our transportation system or anywhere, that we end up with 21 pounds of carbon, and that's what that looks like. It actually, pounds of carbon seems hard. I'm very visual, to me, it's much easier to be able to look at what 21 pounds look like, and that's just to give you a sense of what that is. Next, I just wanted to talk about sort of why it matters what individual states do. A number of the states who are on this call and practitioners who are here are working on these issues because they know how important it is. So I'm probably not telling you anything new, but I always like to compare things to each other. I worked in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the transportation agencies for 12 years and in the air quality agencies for many more than that. And we always got asked, why is your state doing anything? Your country, hasn't fully engaged in the issues around greenhouse gases. Like, why are you doing something? And the answer is always that the states are, compared to other countries, significant sources of emissions and can actually do some really interesting things that the federal government can't. And in transportation, more than in many areas, the issues are state-based, they're regionally based, they're locally based, cities and town-based. And so it's always interesting for me to kind of look back at what the relative relationships are. I don't know if that entertains you, but it does entertain me, looking at kind of why, what the relative reductions are for different areas.
So Sonia, can you speak up just a little bit? People are having just a little trouble hearing you. So
I can speak a little louder.
That would be wonderful, yeah. And you may need to click on the slide again. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Whoops, I went one slide past. Let's see if I can go back. No, I can't. Is there a way to go back on here?
I think that if you use your arrow up keys.
Oh, yes, you've shown me how to do that before. Okay. So looking at what the national numbers are like, you probably know this, but the transportation sector is about 29. It is 29% of the total emissions. This is from the US DOT report to Congress, and that breaks up into a variety of transportation emission sources, but you've got them on the right. Light-duty vehicles are about almost 60%. Freight is about 20%. And aircraft and other things the states don't work on, lubricants and pipelines and things like that are also listed there. In the Colorado work, the work was really in that blue and the purple areas. Just to say that many other states are also doing work in this area, that across the country, state transportation agencies and other stakeholders are really wrestling with this issue of how to reduce greenhouse gases associated with transportation and what factors will make the biggest difference that are within the state ability to have influence. So addressing the factors that drive greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation system, as you know, is quite complex. It's a complex system that happens at all these different levels and requires funding and behavior change and land use change and growth pattern change. And as a result, it's easy within the state agencies to say, look, we really can't control this. But in fact, there are big things that the states can begin to do. And Colorado very directly looked at what they could affect and what they couldn't, and tried to think of ways that they could incorporate these issues in their existing planning programs and in their operations. And so we're going to be hearing from them about what they did. At the same time that they are doing that work, I want to just talk for a minute about good work that's going on in Massachusetts, which is a different kind of approach, and also around the Northeast in the Transportation and Climate Initiative called TCI. So you can see some comparative ways that different states are taking this issue on. And just, I'm sure this is something you know already, but here are the different areas, the kind of 4 areas that the states in the Northeast, and in fact all the states are looking at. So what happens with more efficient vehicles, the federal CAFE standards, what can be done with cleaner and lower carbon fuels, and then specifically how system level operations improvements and behavior change and sort of offering more transit options and more travel options can reduce emissions. Those are kind of the big 4 boxes. We're going to actually, I'm going to skip this one because Michelle and Jeff are going to talk about this in quite a bit of detail in a minute. Massachusetts, just to give you one quick sense of a state that's working on this, has a economy-wide cap, and the goal that have been set are a 25% reduction in emissions from the 1990 levels by 2020 and an 80% reduction by 2050. But unlike many other states, the state has actually taken on a target within the transportation sector within a plan that was written for 2020, and it suggests about, I think they've basically settled on about a 7.6% of the 25% reduction needs to come from the transportation sector. And so they're working on a set of policies and programs and initiatives listed here to give you a sense of what another state is considering. And these collectively will give them the 7.6% reduction. And so they are including the reductions that they're getting from federal standards, but also incorporating a number of other programs that will get them the reductions that they need. And so it's a different approach. It's sort of more of a top-down approach, and Colorado's come up with a bottom-up approach. And both of them will end up meeting in the middle with I think, very useful goals, very useful ends. Another area where this work is going on is within the Northeast, within something called the Regional Transportation and Climate Initiative. It's 11 states from Maine to Maryland and the District of Columbia who've decided to work together to try and reduce greenhouse gases across that region and to look for opportunities to build on the economy in that region. And I don't know if you've heard about the work that they're doing, but it continues on. They've been going for 3 years. It's the Energy, Transportation, and Environment Secretaries who have been meeting regularly. Their staffs, almost 100 people, meet regularly and have built on a wide variety of programs and are now kind of looking to see what they might be able to do next together in the areas of aligning their state programs into one regional program. But it's a very kind of action-oriented effort. And one of the things that they've been looking at is kind of moving out over time. This is not their slide, this is mine, but moving out over time. What things do you need to do today to get reductions in the future? So many of the things on the left-hand side that you can do in the short run, actually things need to start now to be able to give you reductions in the future. And so like a lot of the large infrastructure programs that are being considered in some states, not as part of TCI, but are being considered smart growth efforts, many of the technology changes, light rail, and even some of the alignment around land use really has to start now if we're interested in getting reductions 10 years and 15 years from now. I think largely Colorado has chosen things that they can look at right now, and that's what's exciting about it, is that you'll see they chose things that they were able to start now, that they could see the results quickly, and that's what they're going to present. They've basically been able to assess the energy efficiency of the transportation sector, and it's a very exciting way of looking at it, to be able to think of energy efficiency in the sector the same way we do in the electric sector or the same way we do in the housing sector. It's never been fully explored the way that Colorado is about to do it in the presentation that they'll give you. But we're spending billions of dollars every day for fuel, and that some of that money can actually come back into our states in the same way that energy efficiency in the building sector does. So it's powerful to think of this work. So I'm going to turn this over now to hear 1 year later the actual things that Colorado is doing and what kind of results they've been getting in their program. And I'll turn it over to Michelle Scheuerman, who is just a wonderful manager there in the Colorado planning, in the DOT planning department, and then Jeff Sudmeier, who works mostly with the MPOs and on the in the regional planning section.
Okay, well, thanks, Sonia, and good afternoon, everyone. In a moment, Jeff's going to get into some specific strategies that were developed and some other ongoing initiatives. But a little bit of background and context. So our state legislation requests that CDOT consider greenhouse gas emission reductions in the planning process. So, what is the best way to do that? So we went ahead and looked at the planning process, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about that in a moment. But the reason the strategies that Jeff's going to go over kind of rose to the top was that we were in the planning process in terms of developing a statewide plan when we were doing this initiative. So a lot of the strategies focused on the things that Jeff's going to talk about. But now, since we are developing the statewide plan, it's probably an opportune time to talk about the planning process. So with that, Jeff?
Sure. Thanks, Michelle. So I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about the 10 key strategies that came out of the ESTI effort, and those 10 strategies came from 2 core working groups. One that was focused on advanced technology vehicles and alternative fuel strategies, and one that was focused on smart systems and smart trip strategies. So that, if you want to move the slide, thanks. So our first strategy was focused on promoting the use of natural gas vehicles in public fleets, primarily through promoting public-private partnerships and shared station agreements. Colorado is one of 15 states to have signed a memorandum of understanding calling for a multi-state request for proposal to aggregate state fleet vehicle procurement of NGVs. And last July, a joint RFP was released with these other states and received more than 100 responses to that RFP. So since that time, one of the major impediments to adoption of NGVs by fleets or by the public for that matter is infrastructure. So since that time, the Colorado Energy Office, CEO, who was a partner on this effort, has also undertaken an effort to enhance the NGV infrastructure through the state. CEO recently completed a study identifying key recommendations for CNG infrastructure, including incentives for the conversion and purchase of medium to heavy-duty CNG vehicles and the development of fuel station corridors throughout the state to encourage public adoption and fleet adoption of CNG technology. Our second strategy, unfortunately, has not had quite as much progress as our first strategy. That was a truck stop electrification pilot program. So we had truck stop electrification aimed at reducing idling of trucks. This is something that's been pursued by the private sector, but we were interested in conducting a pilot project to establish some TSE facilities at state rest areas. Unfortunately, as we move forward, we ran into roadblocks relating to the federal regulations against the commercialization of interstate rest areas. And while we looked at potentially implementing this in non-interstate rest areas, the reality is that much of the benefit from such a program would not be there due to the relatively small number of trucks using those non-interstate rest areas. So, at this point in time, not a lot to report on TSE, but still potential maybe in the future. This strategy, consolidate alternative fuel advanced vehicle procurement for public fleets, relates somewhat to the first strategy, a bit of overlap, but really the focus here was on increasing the penetration of alternative fueled vehicles in the Colorado state fleet. Governor Hickenlooper has been a vocal advocate of transition to natural gas fleets, both for the environmental benefits and, in Colorado's case, as a large natural gas producer, the economic benefits to the state. So to that end, CDOT has been working with our state fleet management to look into replacing some vehicles with CNG vehicles. And at current, starting small, but a lot of potential in the future, we're planning in this upcoming year at least 5 CNG vehicles through fleet management. And as infrastructure issues are addressed, as we discussed under previous strategies, I think there's growing potential there beyond that. Turning to strategy 4, sustainability in design and construction. This effort, this strategy was really focused on the sustainability and design of our transportation facilities. And this resulted in the development of recommendations for best practices in sustainable design and construction. And a report on these recommendations and findings is expected shortly. So I think in just touching on challenges, I think one of the challenges that's been pointed out with this particular effort is that at this point these are just voluntary recommendations. There's nothing mandatory, and there's no incentives in place to encourage adoption. So I think we're looking to see what the result of this effort is, and you know, in the future it's possible that incentives could be employed to expand its impact. So strategy number 5 has the relatively long title of Investigate Long-Term Policy Options to Address the Impact of Decreased Infrastructure Revenues from Increased Penetration of Alternative Fuels and Fuel-Efficient Vehicles. That's a lot. Probably the simpler way to put that is mileage-based user fee. In discussing this strategy, it was focused more broadly on, you know, what are ways that we can look at moving beyond current revenue systems, given shifts to alternative vehicles. And the outgrowth of this, or the related effort that I can update you on, is a mileage-based user fee research project that was undertaken by the department. And as part of this project, focus groups were convened this past fall, and stakeholder opinions solicited from groups throughout the state. The project's now wrapped up, and we're anticipating a final report on that effort this summer. And I think one of the key things that was learned from this effort, probably not much of a surprise, is that the idea of an MBUF is a bit of a tough sell. There's a lot of questions and skepticism, and I think one of the things that came out of this study was again, an acknowledgement of the need to educate on a fee. And I think the study found that you know, if they were able to educate and build dialogue, and there was more understanding when people recognized the problems with the current revenue scenario, and how an MBUF might address that in the future. So strategy 6, we're moving into the second work group. The first couple strategies, as I mentioned, were focused on more of the vehicle, alternative vehicles and fuels. The next couple strategies are focused more on smart trips and systems, so kind of mode shift and system efficiencies. And so our first strategy in this grouping was focused on deploying and enhancing better real-time traveler information to enable drivers to make more efficient travel decisions. In this case, most specifically, a smartphone application. So CDOT worked with a vendor that was selected through an RFP process, and an application was developed that is now available up and running for the I-70 and I-25 corridor. Other major Colorado highways are to be added in the coming months, and this provides a variety of real-time traveler information. I think one of the things that's important to note about this is that this effort was undertaken without any cost to taxpayers. The arrangement with the vendor means that the app essentially pays for itself through advertising revenue. Strategy 7 was about enhancing, achieving energy efficiency, or greater energy efficiency in truck fleets. And this was a strategy that one of our partners, the Regional Air Quality Council, really took the lead on. They are aided through a CDOT administered CMAQ grant that's providing some of the funding for this effort. But through this effort, RAC and the Regional Air Quality Council has provided over $4 million in energy enhancing improvements to truck fleets in exchange for the truck fleets agreeing to participate in a annual reporting on their performance and the benefits of those enhancements. Strategy 8, I-70 rolling speed harmonization pilot. This was an effort focused on the use of rolling speed harmonization to alleviate congestion and smooth traffic. This pilot was conducted. However, at this point in time, it's not something that I think we're moving forward with. I think the data did demonstrate that there was some benefit to travel flow, but it really proved unpopular with the public, and so at this time, there's currently no plans to deploy this further. Strategy 9 was our transit strategy, and this is really a strategy that was focused, again, on enhancing traveler information and improving scheduling and fares with the aim to improve the efficiency of the transit system and increase ridership. And this strategy is really shepherded by the Regional Transportation District in Metro Denver, and they have made progress on this through the deployment this year of a smart card program, which essentially replaces or acts as an alternative to the traditional fare box. And while this is a pilot and it's too early to determine whether ridership is increased or other operational efficiencies have been achieved, data is being gathered to answer those questions and analyze travel patterns for spring 2014 report. Anecdotally, drivers and employees are reporting improvements. In our final strategy, energy literacy, which is kind of a theme that runs through the entire effort, CDOT recently completed the selection process for a consulting firm to help us with this. We are now at a point of trying to gain a better understanding of what energy literacy looks like in other states and agencies and create a framework for what aspects might be adopted by CDOT. So moving on, and I'm going to kind of very quickly go through these next couple because I'm running out of time. So, but I wanted to highlight briefly just a couple of related strategies that were not directly part of the ESTI effort, but which are related and demonstrate some ongoing efforts of CDOT and some of our other partner agencies in the state. Briefly, in energy, we've undertaken an energy performance contracting project at CDOT, which is looking to catch up on deferred maintenance on facilities and to do so in a energy efficient manner. So we also have deployed a Engines Off Colorado project, which is kind of a statewide effort based on a City of Denver Engines Off program that seeks to reduce idling, particularly with local government fleets. Our CDOT Region 2 has undertaken a diesel retrofit pilot project, which involves some retrofit equipment to diesel snow plows that allows the drivers to reduce the time to idle the trucks and warm up the cabs. The Project Fever effort is an effort that CDOT participated in along with a number of other partners. It was led by the Denver Metro Clean Cities Coalition and produced an electric vehicle and infrastructure readiness plan. Another CDOT effort, we're currently finalizing development of a Excel-based GHG modeling system that will derive emissions forecasts from data in our existing revenue model. It incorporates some concepts from the Oregon Green Step emission model and will allow us to do some scenario-based planning centered on how various changes in various inputs affect statewide and county-level GHG emissions. Very briefly, a transportation investment analysis toolkit, kind of tangentially related to energy, but really focused a little bit more on efficiency and economic effectiveness of projects. And my last couple of items, we are participating in a pilot project to investigate the potential for renewable energy generation within highway right-of-way. Also in a LED highway lighting retrofit project. And finally, just two transit efforts I'll mention. We're currently undertaking an advanced guideway system and interregional connectivity study, looking at an advanced guideway system connecting the Denver metro area to the mountains. And the interregional connectivity study examining feasibility of high-speed rail through the Front Range. And finally, a regional commuter bus project is currently looking to implement regional commuter bus service that would run through the Front Range and from Denver through the Mountain Corridor. And that would be a new foray for CDOT moving into transit operations. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Michelle.
Thank you, Jeff. So as you can see, there's been great progress made on these strategies. And one point I would like to make that's very important is that it took a consortium of planning partners. We could not have done this alone. We worked with the MPOs and other federal and state agencies. So it takes a lot of effort from everyone. So what we decided to do was go ahead and start to look at the planning process and look at areas throughout where we can identify possible opportunities to integrate GHG emissions reduction and energy efficiency. So this was the chart we used in the ESTI project. And so we looked at policies, resource allocation, which we're now calling program distribution, plan development, developing the statewide plan, public involvement, and project development. So we just didn't solely focus on the planning process, but looked for other opportunities as well. So CDOT is currently developing its statewide plan, and we figured, this is the most opportune time to see if and where we can make a difference in considering GHG emissions reduction and energy efficiency in the planning process. So these boxes that are highlighted are actually some good strides that we've made thus far, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit right now. So the first one is the Transportation Commission policies. Of course, policies set the guidance for planning. Our policy is known as Policy Directive 14, and it's a process, and it helps us to develop a multimodal, comprehensive statewide transportation plan. So we use Policy Directive 14. Its emphasis is on multimodalism, transit, system performance, and asset management. We also have a sustainability planning principle. There are other CDOT policies that also influence and encourage coordination in the early stages of planning, and in essence to look at GHG emission reductions and energy efficiencies through various strategies. So the next one is the operations policy. We do not have an operation policy in place, but we will shortly. What CDOT has done is created an operations division in early 2013, and this signals an increased institutional emphasis on energy efficiency and effectiveness in a climate of limited financial resources. So one of the main goals of the division is to maximize existing infrastructure and develop strategies for reducing congestion. A goal, if accomplished, will not only improve the functionality of the state transportation system, but also reduce emissions from idling and excessive use of energy. Okay, the next policy, which is in place, is a managed lanes policy, and it was issued in December 2012 and requires that before any major capacity improvements are made, that we consider looking at a managed lane or any type of other operational improvement. The next is a bicycle head pedestrian policy. This policy is in place, and it promotes transportation modal choices by enhancing safety and mobility for bicyclists and pedestrians. It identifies early in the planning process and to look at design opportunities for inclusion of bike lanes and pedestrian facilities. And CDOT has also completed its first ever statewide bike and pedestrian plan. We also have in place a Colorado Bicycling Manual of the Rules for the Road for bicycling and walking in the state. The next one is program distribution, and program distribution reflects the planning priorities and encourages greater energy efficiency by emphasizing maximizing the existing system efficiency, and increasing system capacity. So program distribution, yeah, you want something here? Okay, so again on program distribution, we're looking at more efficient allocation of resources through the use of asset management tools and operational improvements. Modal plan integration. So what we're doing at CDOT is looking at incorporating the various modal plans that are being developed. We're actually developing a methodology right now on how to integrate these plans, and so it's not just by incorporating by reference, but really how do you create a multi-modal plan with all these other separate plans and make sure that they're integrated. The next is the state planning factors. So as part of our FASTER legislation, which is a state mandate, we must look at state planning factors, and there's a handful of them. We can send them to you. But there are a few that we focused on particularly for this initiative, which was the GHG emissions reduction. And so we need to consider that in the planning process. That was a mandate. We also have energy efficiency through various executive orders, and of course environmental consultation and resource agencies. The next is the federal planning factors. We're out of order, so forgive me. So everyone is familiar with the federal planning factors or national goals. So CDOT is using the national goal structure as in map 21 to do its performance reporting, its performance reporting structure. So there's a linkage between Policy Directive 14, the planning factors, and how we're going to report out as CDOT on progress made. Okay, data elements. Data integration allows CDOT to better track and evaluate the energy benefits of new policies and programs, letting staff hone in on the highest areas of impact and design future initiatives. So we have two things going on, which includes the data is the greenhouse gas modeling system and the transportation investment analysis toolkit, which Jeff just talked about. Okay, and lastly, the energy literacy. And Jeff did talk about this a little bit. So this is also something we're partnering with the Colorado Energy Office on. So energy literacy and a greater focus on energy issues in education, not only outside with outside stakeholders, but with CDOT as well. And how do we affect and influence travel behaviors? Project design and construction. Jeff talked about this a little bit also, the sustainability railway design and construction plan. So again, this is post-planning, so we're looking at ways to incorporate energy efficiency and greenhouse gas emissions in project design and construction. So we try to look at various parts of the planning processes and beyond where we could include greenhouse gas reduction and energy efficiency. Next steps and key takeaways. So we're going to continue to analyze and expand on these successful pilot programs. We're not going to stop here. We're going to continue to develop new pilots and studies related to energy in the transportation sector. We're going to continue, once we have this program in place to foster greater energy literacy within CDOT and the traveling public. And we want to institutionalize energy efficient practices so they become second nature within CDOT. And we'll also continue to develop enhanced partnerships with municipal, state, and federal agencies, as well as key interest groups, private companies, and the public at large. Okay, some key takeaways. So it is a year later, great progress made, but we went back and did some real soul searching in terms of what we could share that might benefit everyone. As I said earlier, it takes collaboration and partnerships are key. You cannot do it alone. Challenges may come from outside of the DOT's jurisdiction and can be political as well as technical. The new technologies can boost energy efficiency, but may require government support to become market ready. There are opportunities to consider energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction in developing the statewide transportation plan, which we're doing now. And again, heightened awareness promotes the emergence of innovative solutions from throughout the entire organization. And yes, a lot of progress has been made, but there's much more to be done. So with that. So Sonia?
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so thanks, Michelle. That was a one. Robbie, are you going to jump in?
No, go ahead.
This is
Go
Sonia.
ahead.
And Michelle, thank you so much for, and Jeff, for the wonderful, really satisfying review of the programs that you've tried, the pilots, and just the whole way that you approached it. I think it really is groundbreaking work, and that a number of, as I said, a number of other states are kind of struggling with what to do, and I think the way you've approached it's been really interesting. I don't see any questions on the list. I'm wondering if anybody would like to raise a hand or ask a question right here.
Well, what I was going to jump in and say was to remind people that if they did have questions, they can go ahead and type those into the chat box, and we can read some of them off. I think that I'm going to unmute Mary because I think she might have had some questions as well. So I'm going to go ahead and let her ask a couple there.
Okay, I am now unmuted. Hey, well, I guess while I was listening to the presentation, and there's some really, really good, and as Sonia mentioned, groundbreaking stuff in the work that's being done in Colorado, I was wondering, just sort of going chronologically through the different strategies, this might be a question more for Jeff. When you were working with the truck stop electrification, it sounds like you were butting up against some federal policy that restricted commercialization or private investment at rest stops. I'm wondering if you've thought any more about, or at all about, opening up a conversation with the folks who are doing the rulemaking for US DOT and federal highways to potentially create some flexibility in those restrictions that might allow you to pursue truck stop electrification at interstate rest stops?
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't believe that we've had that dialogue, but I think that's something we'd definitely be interested in participating in. At this time, this project is kind of, you know, kind of came to a halt, and the staff person that was actually working on this particular project has since moved on. But you know, I think it's something that definitely has potential, and that might be something that we consider doing, so that this doesn't just kind of die on the vine, but could potentially come back around again if we were able to work with regulators to see if there might be another way to make this happen.
And Jeff,
okay.
This is Sonia. I'm wondering if you or Michelle have any other areas where federal changes in, sort of, my question I guess is broadly, like, what's missing? Are the federal policies really set up well for considering energy efficiency in the planning process and in transportation funding? And if not, what's needed? And I'll direct the question to you, but partly related to DOT, but also partly related to DOE, because I know that the states in the Northeast have started a conversation with DOE about what they might like, what changes they might like, and how DOE thinks about things. Any other areas of policy that you would name that would be interesting for change?
You know, I think one of the, I know that that in some of these strategies there's federal funding sources that have played a part, and I'm actually thinking about the truck fleet enhancements in particular is a project which actually I had misspoke in citing that it was a CMAQ grant. It was actually an EPA funding source, and I think this was a project that the RAC was able to really advance some great improvements to fleets, but you know, it's a program too that there's some question about the future, and so I think as with many things, one of the challenges is always is finding the funding, and where there is funding, where there is some sort of a dedicated funding source, you know, in ensuring that that funding source is reliable, because number of these programs kind of come and go and can, I think, pose problems for the longevity.
Thanks.
So
That's helpful. You might make
directly address your question, but that's kind of just one example that I'm thinking of at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a question that came in, Jeff, while you were speaking. I think this is for the group more in general, but on a per mile basis, how much does CNG reduce greenhouse gases compared to gas or diesel fuel?
You know, I couldn't tell you that myself. We actually have a Sabrina Williams, who is our kind of our energy person and our partner at the GEO that really worked on the alternative vehicle and fuel data, and they unfortunately weren't able to join us here today. So I would hesitate to answer that myself because I'm certainly not an expert in that area.
But what we can maybe share with you is some information that we received through the Colorado Energy Office. Tom Hunt with their office gave a presentation a few weeks ago at CDOT and talked about these various issues. So I think we could pass along that information though as well. So that might be helpful.
And this is Sonia. Generally, it's about a third cleaner, about a third less emissions of carbon. And then the only issue is whether there is any leakage happening within the system, because methane, natural gas, is very warming. So if there's any leakage, then the reductions, the benefits, end up being wiped out by that. But in a very well-functioning system, it's about a third cleaner.
All right, we have another question that came in while you were talking, Sonia. One of our attendees asked, how does a mileage-based user fee reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Is it by reducing travel or by some other means?
And I can take that, and that's an excellent question. And you know, you're right. In and of itself, it doesn't necessarily have any GHG reduction benefit, but I think some of the things that you can do with a mileage-based user fee do have the potential, and I'm thinking in terms of variable pricing or congestion pricing, or some tools that you know, if you have the ability to tie your revenue source to you know, actual miles traveled, there's also the potential to charge different fees for different facilities, different times of day, and I think that can be a powerful tool in terms of addressing congestion and VMT. Now, that's not to say that you know, that's what we would do. The strategy, I think, was just to essentially explore the possibilities, and I think those are some of the possibilities that go with an MBUF.
Yeah, well, I have another question, so I think I'll ask it in lieu of any new ones coming into the question box. I was wondering, and Michelle, this might be for you, but pretty much any of you who were involved with the Managed Lanes project. I was sort of wondering where, if you had some examples of where in Colorado you've implemented the Managed Lanes, and what was your experience with them, successes or lessons learned with implementing managed lanes?
We're actually looking at a project right now. It hasn't been implemented, but soon to be implemented. So we will have something to share. They're still working on that project. It's on the US 36 corridor. But we also can share with you our managed lane policy. I think that would be helpful too. And it talks about how to consider managed lanes before you do any you know, additional improvements or new capacity, and kind of what are the steps and what you need to look at. There's also a guidance document that goes with that policy that gives you some instruction, for lack of a better term, to how to go through that process before you actually look at increased capacity.
Excellent. So you'd be able to share that, and we could put it
Absolutely.
up. Excellent. That would be, I think, very helpful.
It may be in draft form, but let me see what I can do.
Okay.
We can put a lot of these resources up onto the SSTI website, and we do have the report from the Colorado EnergySmart Transportation Initiative. I'm showing the address for where that can be found for audience members, and we can add additional links to, if you just send it to us, we can put that up there so that people can find those things. So we do have one question that came in from one of the audience, and it's, what is the status of the renewable energy generation in right-of-ways? Was this a private-public partnership?
We have someone coming to the phone here.
Okay.
Basically, the internal stakeholder meeting is happening on July 2nd, and that is with DOT, Federal Highways Colorado Division, Federal Highways Headquarters, and CDOT. And it's really, this is our first meeting. It's just getting established. It's just underway. The Volpe Center, the DOT Volpe Center, did a request for pilot projects, and from any state DOT that was interested in renewable energy generation in the right-of-way. And our project was accepted, and so we've been receiving Volpe Center assistance, and they've put together a briefing document, and basically we're moving forward now. We're in the very early stages, and first we're having this internal stakeholder meeting to basically define the primary issues that are identified and get hopefully some consensus from Federal Highways as to what state DOTs would be required, what permits are required, and leasing options and leasing opportunities, and in looking at, whether or not it is a reasonable source of revenue generation for DOTs. So it's a really exciting topic, but it's very early on, and following this internal stakeholder meeting, there will be an external stakeholder meeting that'll be looking at, we'll be meeting with the public utilities and additional power companies throughout the state, and anyone that would potentially be constructing third parties that would be building in our right-of-way. So more to come.
Okay, thank you. And if I remember correctly, I believe Oregon also had a energy production in the right-of-way project. Is that correct? Maybe
yes,
there would be some information. Yeah, I was going to say maybe the person who was interested might either know about it or would be able to look up some information on that as well. I remember we had a short article on that in our newsletter about, I don't know, a year ago or so. Again, I do want to invite people, if they have any further questions, to go ahead and type those into the chat box, and we'll be able to get those answered. I was just kind of curious, you mentioned the rolling speed harmonization. I'm not sure everybody necessarily knows what that is, so I understand it wasn't very popular with the public, but maybe you could explain just a little more about what it was.
Sure. So rolling speed harmonization essentially involves the, at least in the version that we tried here in Colorado, involves the use of law enforcement vehicles to essentially at certain intervals to pull out in front of traffic and to kind of pace that traffic. And so the idea is that you smooth traffic, you reduce turbulence. So in other words, you reduce the kind of the rapid acceleration and deceleration and variation in speed, and sort of smooth the flow of traffic. And if it works, you're able to move more volume in a given amount of time and reduce congestion and theoretically reduce emissions, although I think there's some question of that. I think then in the pilot we did here in Colorado, I think there was some benefit. I'm not sure it was hugely successful in terms of benefit. I think its viability very much depends on the specifics of the particular facility and the traffic volumes. And so I think the fact that it wasn't hugely successful in terms of benefit, and really the public did not like it, looked at it skeptically, despite the fact that they might have actually gotten through a little faster. But I think that's why we're probably not looking to pursue that at this point in time.
People don't like being paced, huh?
Yeah.
Right. I think it's a hard sell for people to think that you have a police car in front of you going 55, that somehow they're making you travel more quickly.
Right. Okay. Well, at this time, I'm not necessarily seeing any more questions coming in. This has been great. It's been really informative, and I just do want to remind people that if you're listening and you want to look at some of the slides again, if you know someone who would like to view the webinar or the slides, we will have both the slides and a recording of the webinar up on our website probably tomorrow. It takes me just a little time to do a little editing on the recording. The report from Colorado is available on the SSTI website, so please go ahead and look at that. We also invite people to sign up for the SSTI newsletter. It comes out every 2 weeks. We'll have news of upcoming webinars in the newsletter, as well as links to reports and articles of interest to the transportation community. You can also follow us on Twitter. There's a follow button on our website, and we'll post reminders of webinars, newsletter, and other things of interest there. So I hope that everyone found this very informative. I certainly did, and I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much for helping us out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.